I can tell you specifically, in order for you to get all the points on this, what I'm looking for. So, the first thing is I was looking at questions 1 to 4. They did not have to be in the same form as those answers were in the back. I would have accepted the answer exactly as you put down. Y equals 3 times, in this case, x minus 2, right, plus 1.
You would take that.
I would, because that's the only part we did yesterday. Now, what they did is that they distributed it, and they wrote it in slope-intercept form. But I told you yesterday, I need you to turn to the front. I told you yesterday that I would be okay if you left, especially in this class period because it came up in period 2, that you could leave your answer in this, what we referred to as vertex form of our equation. You could leave it like that for all those first 4. When I get to number 5, the reason I have the yellow highlight for questions, all those different questions there, is that I need you to tell me the slope. If you did not tell me the slope, I need you to do that. So in number 5, if I'm looking at that question, you would tell me, Anna, the slope is what? 2. Now, I had someone say, okay, anytime I'm putting down the slope we want to keep in mind is always a ratio, which is a fraction. And if I'm going to graph this on my graph paper, I should probably even write down 2 over 1. The green highlight is for you to tell me the ordered pair that you're using. So Maria, using this equation, what was the start point or ordered pair that they had? 3, 2. Does everyone agree our point is at 3, 2? No, it's not at 3, 2. Because when you look at the equation, it's always supposed to be a minus, and they have a plus 3, which means my start point is at negative 3, 2. So when I go, and if I'm graphing number 5, this is what I need on your graph paper. I do not want just the 5 with nothing written. I want the 5, and then I want you to put the equation that was right here. That needs to be on your graph paper. If you didn't do that for 5, 6, 7, no problem. We're not turning it in today. You're going to do it now. Add that to your graph. So that when you graph an equation, or when you graph a problem, if I'm looking at number 5, I would have seen on your graph paper 2 times x plus 3 plus 2. I would have gone to the start point, negative 3, positive 2. And then I would see a slope of 2 over 1, which means rise of 2 and run of 1. And if I can't keep going up 2 and over 1, then I'm going to go down 2 and back 1. And I'm going to get at least 3 points, and then I'm going to extend that, and I'm going to put an arrow. So for questions 5, 6, 7, if you turn it into me, and you do not put your equation, I'm not going to give you full credit for it. If you turn it in and you don't put the arrows on there, I'm not going to give you full credit. When I look at these, you need to identify first what was your slope and your y-intercept in each case. Now, when I look at question number 11, which no one had a question on 11, but if you're looking at number 11, the first thing you have to do is find the slope. If I'm finding the slope in 11, I might have started with the slope formula. Many of you got that wrong yesterday, even though you said, I don't think I have to write the equation. I would recommend writing the equation. So if I'm looking at this one, Vanessa, start me off if I was looking at number 11, what would I be putting down for my slope? How much? 1 minus 0. Yep. And then in our denominator, I'm going to have negative 2 minus 4. So I end up with what for an answer, Zach? Negative 1/6. Does it matter if I think of the 1 as being negative or the 6? So I had someone this morning say it can't be negative 1 over 6 because that's a positive 1 on top and you subtract 1 minus 0. But it is negative 6 in the denominator, right? So it doesn't matter if you put the negative in the numerator, if you put it in the denominator, so that I write the equation, I got my slope. That's what I started with. I now have to choose which point. So Caleb, if you're looking at this one, do you want to choose our first point or our second point for number 11? Which point do you want to choose? Because it doesn't matter. There's 2 answers in the back. You just have to choose one. first point or second one? Okay, so we're going to use the first one. I'm going to have y minus equals a negative 1/6. Then I'm going to have Caleb x what? X minus 4. Do I really need to put the plus 0 back here? Not really, but I would. It's okay if you put that back there, but you don't have to have plus 0 as you're looking at that. That's why they had the two answers in the back. The other one used the with the negative 2, 1. Okay? So whichever one you choose to use. As I look at 14, 14 says hint, use it as an ordered pair. Now, we kind of talked about our independent and dependent variable. X is independent, Y is dependent. In this case, when you think of the situation, we're talking about tickets and then their cost, right? If I said, how much does a ticket cost? You would say, you would be looking at the change in Y, right? Which is how many dollars, when you subtracted that, over the change in X. Per one ticket, maybe, right? You would maybe subtract those and try and find that out for each ticket. So when you do this one, if they're telling you the price of 3 tickets is $22.50, in number 14, that means 3 is at $22.50. And the second point is at 7 tickets for $52.50. You should be able to find the slope using that slope formula. You then want to write the equation. It depends on which ticket you use. That's why they have these two answers in the back as you look at that. When I am looking at question number 18 and 19, and the question was, how do I graph those? And I need to, it says, on graph paper, graph the line that passes through these points. So I am not going to do all of these as I'm looking at them. So if you look at 17, 18, 19, we kind of talked about that with number 5. Is there any particular one that anyone really wants me to look at between 17, 18, and 19? Landon, is there one in particular? 18. 18. So in 18, I'm going to use my start point, right? So on my paper for 18, I'm going to put down, negative 2, 1, because this was the information that I was given, and then m equals negative 3. Now when I put m equals negative 3, I might want to write it as a ratio of, because it's slope, so negative 3 over 1. So I am now going to go to my graph, and I'm going to plot the point negative 2, positive 1. That's my start point at my y and x axis. If I'm looking at a slope of negative 3, again, someone said this morning, draw the eyebrows of the face, right? That helps me make sure I graph my line the right way. Negative slope is going down. So I know this line has to go down. And if you go down 3 and you go 1 this way, my line is not slanted in the right direction, right? So I have to go down 3 and over 1. Down 3 and over 1. And I would continue doing that. I could go up 3 and back 1. And then I'm going to draw it and use a straight edge. I have protractors up here if you need to use a straight edge. So that when we look at your lines, they should be having that line going through it with the arrows. And that's how you have to do. You did not have to write an equation for those last ones. Today you have to write equations with that. So make sure you're finishing this. Again, this is your x, this is your y. They ask you to write an equation. First thing you have to do, find the slope. Once you have the slope, you should be able to pick any one of your points. Slope, x minus, plus. Okay? So if you did not finish those, or you did not get straight lines for any of these, make sure you go over those this weekend to get that complete. We are not turning this in today. It is very likely we will. Monday. On Monday, we'll have a quiz on this, so I'm giving you a little extra time to make sure you're ready for that quiz. Okay? A little quiz on what you did from the homework, exactly. So make sure you know how to do it. Those of you that have been getting a 1 out of 4 and 2 out of 4 on those quizzes, to me, I don't know if you're doing the homework or figuring out what your mistakes are. So as we look at lesson C3, we kind of have a lot to get through in the rest of class. Identifying our parent function, we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to talk slope-intercept form of our linear functions, which is f of x equals mx plus b. Or a lot of times you will see it as y equals the mx plus b. Key thing, we're going to be talking about our x and y intercept. So this first vocab is intercept. An intercept is a point on the graph in which the function intersects the axis on a coordinate plane. Then we have two very specific kinds of intercepts. Where it crosses the y-axis is called our y-intercept, and where it crosses the x-axis is called our x-intercept. So if I'm looking at my intercepts, they also have some other special names that we will use throughout the year. When we talk about our y-intercept, usually it is at 0, and then we use the letter b. And a lot of times when we talk slope-intercept form, what that means is that it's any number along this y-axis. So it's always 0 with that. When we think about our x-intercept, that is when the second coordinate is always 0. The y-coordinate is 0. And a lot of times they might use the letter a, just because they have a and b for the x-intercept and y-intercept. Another word for x-intercept, later this year we'll use the word Brooks. We'll use the word solution to our equation. So a solution to our quadratic, that is going to be always called the x-intercept. Okay? So the y-intercept is what we use a lot of with slope-intercept form. We did this last year. You did this last year. Okay? So, using this given information, they ask you to write an equation like we did today. So, the form of the equation that we're using is y equals, right, Rm times x minus x1 plus y1. So if I'm starting this equation, I would have, Keegan, y equals 5. And then I'm going to have x minus Logan, x minus 0. And then I'm going to have plus 2. If I'm simplifying that, Lauren, I'm going to have y equals what? Y equals 5x plus just plus 2, right? Because if I distributed this like this x minus 0, that's just 5x plus 2. We love this point. What is this point called? Because it has 0 as our x coordinate and then has a number.
Oh, y-intercept.
It's called our y-intercept, okay? So we just talked about that. That's our y-intercept. In this equation, if we're going to start writing it, okay, Lucas, start me off. I'm going to have y equals, what was my slope? 1/4. Jacob, keep going.
X minus 1.
Yep. And then minus 6. This one, it says now we want to simplify this equation. That means we want to use our distributive property. So we're distributing, right? As I use that distributive property, as I'm looking at this one, Mason, I'm going to have y equals what? 1/4 x. I'm going to continue, Landon, and I'm multiplying and going to take 1/4 times negative 12 gives me what?
3.
So negative 3, right? And then I have this minus 6. Okay. So Maria, I want to simplify the equation because I don't like this minus 6 minus 3. So I'm going to have y equals what? 1/4 x minus negative 3 minus 6, negative 3 plus negative 6. Negative 9? Yeah. I would take this answer, or I would take this answer this way. Y equals 1/4 x plus negative 9. So it says when you write these equations, you can simplify them. They are now in a different form. This is our slope-intercept form. Those first 4 answers on that C2 worksheet were in slope-intercept form in the back, right? They all look like this, okay? You did not have to write them that way. I said that, even though some of you might have thought yours were wrong. You had them right. It says this form is good also when we are, for what we're looking at today. So it says in question 1 above, the point we used was the y-intercept. And in number 2, we did not use the y-intercept. Notice any patterns when you're simplifying. If we start with 0, 2 in our equation, this is just the slope, and this is the y-intercept back here. Whereas if you do not start with the y-intercept, you got to do a little more work, right? And I don't need you to write this down word for word, what it says here, because some of you get really caught up that it has to be exactly all this written in your notes. But this is kind of the general idea, okay? And so I don't know that you need to write all of this down, but it says, in number 1, the 0 parenthesis went away. It's easy to simplify, right? We just had 5x and plus 2. That is slope-intercept form. That second equation, number 2, there was no 0. So we had to just do a little more work to simplify. What's nice is if they give you the y-intercept as a point, you don't have to do much work to simplify it.
Yeah.
The y-intercept is going to be right in that equation, okay? So again, I don't need this written down word for word. The key thing is, if you have the y-intercept, it's easier. Don't have to do any simplifying. If you do not have the y-intercept, you just got to do a little more work, right? You got to distribute and add your like terms. So we distributed first, then we added our like terms. Whereas here, we just wrote the equation down. We were done, right? That's all they're talking about there, okay? So, top of the next page. Nick, go ahead and read.
Family functions is a group of functions with common characteristics. In this unit, we will be studying family functions known as linear functions. In common characteristics in this family is that they are straight lines.
So all of ours are going to be straight lines. The next thing they tell us is that the simplest function is our function y equals x, so that's going to be our parent function. Linear functions are always going to be, a model for linear functions is a linear equation. All of the powers are raised to the 1. We've talked about that. X is really to the first power, y is to the first power, so everything's to the first power. The graph of that is going to be all ordered pairs that are on that line. So that is all my x, y points on this red line. Every fraction decimal of a point are going to make that true. When we look at a table, that includes really ordered pairs that are solutions. So this page is just a lot of reading on this page. It says linear equations can be written in many forms. The previous lesson we did linear vertex form. I'm going to attach a Quizlet for you to take a look at. It's also known as the modified point slope form. So if you see point slope form, it's always going to be just a little different than what we did of that vertex form. You can see on the board up here, I wrote down what is that point slope form. Point slope form is when you do usually y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. What was our vertex form? Our vertex form, right, was almost like that, except it had the m times x minus x1, and then it had plus y. So this is what was different, is the y1 was here, whereas in vertex form or point slope form, it's usually here. So a lot of textbooks use point slope form, also referred to as vertex form, okay? What does the m stand for? The m stands for how we're going to move. That's our slope, okay? It is a ratio. Slope is a ratio. On the quiz yesterday, I had some people put something down like -4 plus 2. That is not a ratio. -4 over 2 is a ratio, and that does simplify to -2. This is not a ratio. The other thing that is not a ratio is -4 comma 2, or just -4, 2. That is not a ratio. That is -4, 2. A ratio is simply writing it as a fraction. And then the b is going to be our beginning. That's our y-intercept. It's always that 0b. So this page was a lot of vocab. We're going to get started trying to do this as quickly as possible. It's going to be close to the end of the period when we get through these notes. So, first thing, find the slope. Put 2 points on your graph. On each line, please put 2 points on there and count your rise to run. So, to me, this is an easy point to pick. This is another easy point to pick. This one, not so easy, right? Because I'm not sure if it's over a half or over a third. So I want to pick easy points. Do the same thing on the other one, and please write to the side of each of these. Tell me m equals. M equals. Remember, m is our movement. It is our slope. It is a ratio of numbers. If it helps you to think of, the reason I put m up here is because this is our answer as an equation, and the equation is going to be in slope-intercept form. It's going to be y equals something x plus, right? That's what both of these answers are going to look like. Y equals something x plus. And the something here is my slope. So up here, what did we have for the slope when you talked to your shoulder partner? What did you guys have, Sam and What do you guys have over there?
Slope of 2.
Slope of 2. Could I write it as 2 over 1? Yep, and then write it as 2. So I'm going to have y equals 2x. Can we tell what the y-intercept is?
Yes.
Right here, right?
Starfish.
Minus 2. Y equals 2x minus 2. This is my beginning. This is my 0, in this case, my 0b, right? It was down at negative 2. If I'm looking at that next one, Grace and Nick, what do you guys have for the slope? What'd you have? 1. And it's positive, right? Because when we think of that slope guy, that's a positive slope, right?
The second one is not.
Second one isn't positive? So when you went and you're counting your slope, my hint is if you're going down, even if you go down 1 and over 1, going down is negative, to the right is positive. This should be a negative 1 over 1. Or just a negative 1 for a slope. And if you don't want to put the negative 1 in when you write your equation, I would take it as just negative x. What is our y-intercept in this equation? 2, right? This point up here is my y-intercept. It is located at 0, 2. That is the b. That's my beginning, okay? So it says, is there a shortcut to write an equation directly in slope-intercept form if we are looking at that? And as we look at that, is there a shortcut? In this case, the y equals mx plus b. If we were doing this from today's homework, you would have probably told me y equals m times the x minus plus. If you picked the 0, negative 2, you would have had it done right away. But most of ours today are not going to give you that y-intercept. If you can see the y-intercept, you want to use that point and put it in right away, okay? So, the next part asks you to simply identify the slope and y-intercept. M is the slope. It's the number that's the coefficient of x. So that word coefficient, that's the number times x. The y-intercept is the number that's being added behind it, okay? So in the first one, I would say my slope is 3, and my y-intercept, my b is 2. Sometimes I'll write it as an ordered pair, 0, 2, because that's going to be my start point if I'm asked to graph that, right? That's the start point. Please do the next 2. Check with your, you want to do a rewrite first, right? Because it's not in the right form. I want to rewrite it so that it is what? Y equals. So when we did literal equations, the first unit, right? We solved for y, that's what you have to do in this one. So if I'm looking at this second one, my slope should have been, if I'm looking at that, Piper, what'd you have? 2/3. Y-intercept, if we are looking at Abby, should be? -4. When I do the rewrite, I am going to have what for my rewritten equation, Mason? Y equals 2x minus 4. Same thing, always minus 4?
Plus 4.
Plus 4, do we agree that we should have added 4 to both sides? Plus 4, does that make sense, Mason? Okay, so now when I'm looking at my y, my slope and y-intercept, Jacob, what am I going to have? M is equal to 2, 4. Again, if you wanted to think of this as 0, 4, of this one as 0, -4, that's going to help us when we graph, right? Because it tells me directly where to place that point on my graph. The question says write an equation. We need it in slope-intercept form. So you can see that I put the answers. I want them in slope-intercept form. The first thing you have to do, find the slope. Find slope. How do we find the slope? M is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Keegan, start us out. Write this with us. So -8. Keep going. Yes, and in my denominator, I should have what, Logan? 5 minus 2. So my slope came out to be a -9 over 3. So slope equals, can I put -3? Can I put that in my equation right now, right? That's the M. -3. The easiest way to write it in slope-intercept form is go to our vertex form that we had for today. So we're going to write y minus, or y equals, -3. Lucas, which point do you want to use? First or second? second. Okay, so you're going to have x minus what?
X minus 5.
X minus 5. Write this in. Equals or plus?
Negative 8.
Plus negative 8. We have to distribute, right, in order to get our answer. So I'm going to have y equals, Emma, when I distribute, I'm going to have a negative 3x.
Plus 3.
Emma, sorry, Emma. Negative 3x plus how much? We're going to take that negative 3 times negative 5 to give us. Again, I'm thinking I didn't realize you guys all changed your names. Sorry about that. It should be a positive 15 and then plus negative 8. All right. So now, Anna, you want to give us a shot and then we'll try Emma again in a little bit. But go, Anna. Y equals negative 3x, add your like terms. Positive 15 plus negative 8. Same thing you have on your paper. What do you get when you add your like terms together?
7.
Plus 7. So if we are looking at our equation in slope-intercept form, negative 3x plus 7. Did anyone use the point 2,1? Should I get the same equation if I do 2,1? That final answer should be the same. And I just want to show you just really quick, if you would have done that, you would have had y equals, we still have negative 3 times x minus 2, right? Plus 1. When you distribute that, you would have had equals negative 3x plus 6 plus 1. That still gives us 7, right? I would usually choose smaller numbers because then I don't have to do the multiplication, is just simpler. So please do that next one right now, right behind it. What do we have to start with? Start with your slope, okay? Once you've found the slope, okay, write out and show your work for how you are finding the slope. Once you do that, you are going to our equation from today. Y equals Rm times x minus plus the number. Just get a pencil that works. I got pencils over there so that I can keep you going, okay? So if we are looking at this one, Lauren, you want to tell us what we're going to subtract? Minus a negative 2, and then in my denominator? Nice job. So here we're going to change that to plus positive. When I do that, what am I getting for an answer, Maria? Negative 3 plus 2 gives us negative 1, and in my denominator, Caleb, I'm going to end up with negative 2. Negative divided by negative, if you ever leave the slope like that, I'll probably mark it wrong. It should be 1/2. If you want to put it as 0.5, I'm okay with that, but I would recommend keeping slope as a ratio, which means keep it as that fraction. So we're going to put in 1/2, we could put in 1/2 in our answer down here. Which point do you want to use as you're looking at this, Emily? First or second one? Second one. So, tell me what to write in down here. If I am looking at that, I'm going to have y equals 1/2 x minus 1 plus negative 3. I'm going to distribute the 1/2. So I'm going to get y equals 1/2 x. Half times negative 1, can I put it as a decimal? Sure. I want to put negative 1/2, right? Or negative 0.5, right? It's a positive 1/2, and this was a minus 1, right? So we're watching the sign, that is a negative, okay? And then I have plus negative 3 back there. So what is my final y-intercept? When I add my like terms here, I get negative 3.5. Someone said, well, how do you grab negative 3.5? Well, it's halfway between negative 3 and negative 4. Negative 3.5 is right here. And then I go up 1 and over 2, right? So negative 3.5, right? Someone said, well, if I kept this as a fraction and had negative 1/2, then you would have had negative 1/2, and maybe you wrote this negative 6. Negative 7 over 2 is the same as negative 3.5, right? Most people understand graphing at a negative 3.5 a little better. So this unit does have a lot with it, so we got to get through this last part. So, when you graph, start point, it says up here, is your y-intercept. My y-intercept is 2. Better, 0, 2. That's my start point. On the graph, start at 0, 2. You guys did slope intercept last year for about a month, so I know you've done this before. Next thing we are looking at is how do we move. The movement is our slope m. It is negative 2/3. And again, I heard some of you talking when you were thinking of that last one, of thinking about the eyebrows of the slope guy and going, oh yeah, this definitely has to go down. So negative 2 means I'm going down 2 and over 3 to the right. I cannot go down 2 and 3, so I'm going to go up 2 and then I go backwards 3. And then I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to put arrows on that. And it is not a segment, it is a line. So please make sure you put arrows on your line. If you don't, I'm probably going to mark it wrong. If I wanted to check, because some of you are like, how do I make sure I did it right? This point right here is located at what? 3, 0. The reason I don't want to check all these points in between here is they're really hard to tell where they are unless you're on the graphing calculator or on the decimals calculator. 3, 0 should make this true. If I go to the equation, y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. And I say x is 3 and y is 0. Is that true? Does 0 equal negative 2/3 times 3 plus 2?
Yes.
Because this is negative 2 plus 2, and that equals 0. So any point on this line must make this true. That's what it makes for a solution to that line, right? We just picked the easiest one, the y-intercept, to start at. Okay? Last one. If you would read the situation for us, please, Natalie. Next
Homer charges a $65 fee for a repair for $35 per hour. Write an equation to model the total cost, y, of a repair that takes x hours. What graph models the total cost?
So today's equations, they gave you a point and the slope. This equation, easiest to write it in y equals mx plus b4. They are telling us the m, or our rate of change. How much is the person charging per hour? That is my m. That is how much, and the key word is per. That's letting you know it is a slope. So if I'm starting that one, my equation, y equals $35 an hour. Some of you on that last test forgot to put the variable when you took the 50 minus 7. You just put 50 minus 7 instead of 7x. You have to have the variable with it. But they started off at how much per hour for a starting fee? That's my B. My beginning is $65 fee up front. So plus 65. So you're going to graph starting at 65. We add $35 in the first hour. We're at 100. Keep going up. Another $35, right? So please fill in your graph.
That's expensive.
Okay. So as you were looking at that, right? And actually, that's probably pretty cheap. I don't think I know one plumber that charges $35 an hour, even for their apprentice. They are making closer to $90 an hour is what I've been paying plumbers. If they come and you have a backed up toilet or something, they're making $90 an hour. Or at least their business, that's what they're charging me as
I
a
would
consumer.
climb into the sewer before I pay that.
Well, I don't know that you would, but I'm sure, you'll probably have that option sometime. So, on your homework, it says, find the slope and y-intercept and graph of each of these. When you go to make your graph, if I am looking at your paper, and I look at your graph paper, and I'm going to hand out graph paper for you. If I look at your graph paper, right by the equation, right by number 7, I need to see y equals 3x plus 1. Then I'm going to see your start point, and I'm going to see your graph. Okay? Do not just put the number by the question. Besides that